Hey everyone, first of all, I am not in Atlanta. I am in suburban Atlanta, and the reason, contrary to my show last night, is that well, first of all, the NFL owners meeting doesn't begin until tomorrow at 1:30 Eastern. That's a tentative start, and the media check-in isn't until that morning, so it didn't make sense for me to go an hour's drive in, only to have to come back just for a couple of shots. And I wound up, if I had have done that, I would have missed Oakland Marilyn Bishaf on CNN, which is already on CNN, excuse me, on Zenny 62. Zenny 62 on YouTube here. It's the video before this one, or will be. Anyway, I digress. Big news today was announced by the NFL through Daniel Kaplan of the Sports Business Journal that the 2023 and 2024 Super Bowls will be awarded to Glendale and New Orleans, respectively. That's right, Glendale, New Orleans, respectively. So the 2022 Super Bowl is to be in Los Angeles, the 2021 Super Bowl, Tampa, 23 will be in Glendale, that's Phoenix, and then 24, New Orleans. What that means is, how you doing, Barely? What that means is that Las Vegas has not been awarded a Super Bowl. And this runs contrary to what Raiders president Mark Bedane thought was going to happen when he commented earlier this year that he expected the Raiders to receive, first, even before the year, he said they're going to aim for the 2023 Super Bowl. And then he said in his most recent comments before this week's owners meeting that they're going to try for 2023, 2024, 2025. Well, they didn't get 2023 to 2024. So we would have to hope for 2025, and even then, it would appear from this news it's no guarantee. First, consider this, folks. First of all, this is the common pattern of, or has been the common pattern of Super Bowl awards. The NFL has awarded the Super Bowl generally to the city that built, the team in the city, excuse me, that built a new stadium in its community. That's the way it's been done. So you can go back and give a number of examples, as I do here in this post. I can give a number of examples. For example, I think you can start with the most recent Super Bowl and work backward. Super Bowl 53 will be here in Atlanta. The new stadium opened just last year. And quick turnaround, basically it'll be 2 calendar years before the Super Bowl 53 is played. Prior to that, it was the Minnesota Vikings' new stadium, which opened 2 calendar years before the 52nd Super Bowl was played this year. And then, of course, we've had the example as far back as, well, when the University of Phoenix Stadium was built, it was opened in 2006. The Super Bowl was played there for the first time in 2008, Super Bowl 42. So the NFL has really endeavored to make sure that Super Bowls were played in stadiums and communities that built new facilities. And this has been a policy for some time. It even continues with Los Angeles, because originally it was thought that Los Angeles dramatic new stadium would be finished next year. And so every effort was made to give it the 2020 Super Bowl. But because of delays in construction associated with the facility, They moved it up a year to 2021, and Tampa has the 2020 game. So there's another example. The only outlier there is, if you call it that, is Indianapolis. The Colts in the Indianapolis community hosted their first Super Bowl 4 years after Lucas Oil Stadium was opened in 2008. Okay? So there's another example. So you have to ask, what's going on? And as Barry Lee just asked, he says, is it possible, here on live stream, he says, is it possible that the NFL is taking a wait-and-see attitude with Vegas? Whether or not it will be a success in Vegas as they hope. No, I don't think it's that, Barry Lee. Earlier this year, the league changed its Super Bowl format from a bid process, which I participated in, to one where the league negotiates with a single city behind the scenes, and if they can't work that out, they bring another city into the picture. So, without having confirmed this speculation I'm about to offer, I would say that I believe what happened is in an attempt to follow the common process of giving a Super Bowl to a city, particularly a city where $750 million of public money has been or is being spent toward construction of an NFL-ready facility there, a Super Bowl in a timely fashion. In the talks, I believe what happened was this. They realized, they being the NFL, that the parking wasn't ready. And you would say, why reach for something that is publicly known? In other words, there's a habit, a human habit, to really believe that something is not happening for reasons that we know about as opposed to reasons we don't know about, right? But I formed and headed the Super Bowl Oakland bid. Jacksonville won in 2000 the right to host the 2005 Super Bowl over Oakland and Miami. And then I've covered Super Bowl bids and Super Bowl wins since then. So I think I know something about the process. But what I believe happened in this instance is that the NFL needs parking in proximity. It calls for in the bid for the host city to have 1,000 buses and limousines and vehicles. You got to have space to park those. So if you bring those in to the Las Vegas situation, where you have 2,400 parking spaces, immediately, boom, you've wiped out 1,000. So you're down to 1,400. And when you consider staff that have to work the game, that pretty much wipes out, unless you're going to tell staff they can't have immediate access. That pretty much wipes out the most readily available parking spaces for other NFL alumni, dignitaries, the NFL family. You see what I'm getting at? Given what I said about the 1,000 1,000 buses and limousines needed, okay, some of the higher rungs of the NFL family will be able to be taken care of within that. But you have a lot more people beyond that. The NFL family, from a Super Bowl planning perspective, is considered to be about, the immediate NFL family that's taken care of it from a hotel room standpoint, is considered to be, in terms of size, a minimum of 17,000. I.e., you have to have 17,000 top quality hotel rooms within a mile of, within an hour's drive of the stadium. That's for the Super Bowl bid. Now, what everyone wants is to get as close to the stadium as possible on game day, because, yeah, you may be staying at the hotel somewhere in Las Vegas along the Strip and in the region, right? But when game day comes around, you want front door access before the game. You want immediate car access after the game. You don't want to do a lot of waiting, all right? So you don't want to do a lot of waiting. Someone named Peter Thompson says the main issue, I believe, is the stadium seat limit. Actually, no, because the plan should have, and I'll be very surprised if it didn't. If it didn't, this would spell a massive error in design. It should have a provision where you can add seats to the Super Bowl, all right? And so, for example, when I headed this effort to bring the Super Bowl to Oakland, the Coliseum had 54,464 seats. So we had a plan to add an additional 12,464 seats. And that, actually a little bit more than that, but it got us, and I stand corrected, it wasn't 54,000, it was closer to 58,000. But the additional third deck got us to close to 70,000. It would have been, admittedly, one of the smallest, if not the smallest, Super Bowl in history to that point. But the bottom line is we had a third deck design and an architect that was known to the NFL ready and designed and ready, okay? Now, in the case of the Raiders Stadium, I would be shocked beyond belief if that was the problem. And so I'm going to dismiss that as anything close to the problem and go back to parking. And the reason is that when you're talking about planning a Super Bowl, it's more than just the stadium. You have to have it known where your parking areas are located. They don't have that. You have to have it known how your roadways are designed to access the stadium. Since they don't have the parking areas located, they don't know which roadways they're going to use. And when I say parking areas located, for those of you who say they've located them, all right, they haven't announced they actually purchased those lands. Okay, so so any stadium in the NFL that purports to host a Super Bowl has to have a plan for the expansion of seats in every single stadium that I'm talking about, save for one. AT&T Stadium, Cowboys Stadium, has had one. Why not in that instance? Because it's big anyway. It doesn't need it. Although, having said that, when it did host Super Bowl, they packed as many extra seats as they could, and then they had a problem with respect to seat location and tickets, which opened up a gigantic lawsuit. But I digress. In this instance, it's parking. It's got to be parking because they have not, and they have until September, completed their parking plan. So let's say that's, but I don't believe that's the only problem, because all of these planning issues are interrelated. I think the other problem is they don't quite know when the stadium is going to be ready. Yeah, I know that they say it's 2020, but the Raiders have already signed a lease, or excuse me, I'm jumping the gun. The Raiders are planning a lease to stay in Oakland until the Vegas Stadium is finished, which could take them through the 2020 NFL season. Also, there's a fine print in the documents worth reading that says, and I quote, that it will take 3 months for the Raiders to move into Las Vegas Stadium once it's open. So all those documents stating that the certificate of occupancy will be handed out in August, well, that just only means, hey, you can move in, but it takes 3 months to move in. Given that it takes 3 months to move in, it means, hey, you're not going to see an NFL season there until, what, late October, November? So I personally can't see a scenario where the NFL actually plays half of its season in Las Vegas and the other half in Oakland. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. it just wouldn't make any sense to me. They might as well just complete their Oakland engagement and then move, even though it's going to cost them uh, a pretty penny to do so with respect to the Coliseum, but that's another story. Okay, so Barry Lee says parking would definitely be an issue when you have to account for all the media trucks, not including the fans. Right, that's right. There's simply not enough space there. That's the problem, and that's the first problem. The second problem is the Raiders haven't identified the other lands. The adjunctly related problem here is that if they had a more comprehensive plan that included a wider process of land acquisition next to the stadium, would have been expensive, this problem we wouldn't be talking about. They would have had a coordinated plan already done without worry. But right now, with the problem is what I've said before. They're approaching this in a piecemeal way. Well, we've got this to deal with. Oh, and then there's this new problem. Oh, and then there's this other problem. Oh, and then there's this one. As opposed to stepping back and saying, all right, how many years is it going to take us to really figure this out and get it right? Form a plan, lay out those years, and then execute that plan. Let's take the bond issue. Look, a year ago in March, the stadium tax revenue was, for the first year in March 2017, was just over $5 million. This time, a year later, it's $3.9 million. And there's nothing to say, given, for example, the new news that other states can do sports gambling, that this downward visitor trend is going to continue. This has been 10 months of statistics where visitors in Las Vegas and Clark County for hotels were less in the month of this year or over the last 10 months than the previous years for each month. And that has nothing to do with 1 October before you say that. No, that started last June of 2017. Okay, the popular opinion is, well, the horrible events of 1 October caused that. No, it didn't help. There's already a long-term visitor structural decline going on there, but I'm getting off the point. Barry Lee says, what doesn't make sense is they have open desert all around Vegas with plenty of room for parking, yet they pick land that is locked to a small area. Yeah, that's a great point because they have businesses around it immediately, which means you've got a cost problem of trying to acquire land close to the stadium because that land is used, and what little land may be available is at prices that are high and going up because in part of the Raiders' existence or attempt to exist there. And then where you go on to get cheaper land, you have to do what? You have to go out. And then, of course, there's the process of going from those different places in and the need to establish a kind of transit system unto itself just to serve those parking areas. It's a big problem. And it's a problem that I'm certain has not escaped the concern of NFL Senior Vice President of Events Peter O'Reilly and his staff. And I've tried to reach out to past representatives of the NFL to see what their thinking was on that, so stay tuned. And so Corey Brown, hey Corey. Corey says, I've seen firsthand the hotel markups in Vegas for a boxing match, but for a Super Bowl, it will be ridiculous. Plus, who would want to spend all that money and still have to get bussed for miles? Yeah, that's the colloquial view. And again, if you're expressing that view, I guarantee you the NFL is too. Because my first Super Bowl was here in Atlanta in 2000. And unbeknownst to the planners, there was an ice storm. And that ice storm dictated the experience for the Super Bowl. It was bad. It was fun too, but it was also hard to get around the town. It was an ice storm. I-C-E, ice. Okay? And it impacted, for example, in the NFL Commissioners Party, where it took 3 additional hours just to get out of the facility that was the Commissioners Party that was held at. I went with my friend Randy Gordon, who was on my Super Bowl committee, J. Randy Gordon, remember that? We waited for 3 hours to get transportation to get out of there. And so did the owners. It took the owners like 2 hours. People were just cursing up a storm, all right? So if you have that kind of problem with weather, imagine pouring a Super Bowl onto an area that is not adequately designed to handle the traffic for the Super Bowl night activities. I'm talking about Las Vegas. And then you've got parking for an owner that's not at the stadium. They have to go elsewhere, which is going to be distant, and they have to wait for that person or persons in traffic to get there if they can't park. Or let's take it the other way around. Let's say the owners are, which is more likely, the owners' vehicles will be right there, but then they still are landlocked, traffic locked, and trying to get out of there. No matter how you look at it, unless you're going to use a helicopter, there's a problem. Okay? So I would bet that's part of the issue. I would bet that's part of the issue. Also, the Rams' delay didn't help matters by the fact that it was moved back a year, the year that the Raiders probably thought, hey, that should be ours. So what the NFL is doing, in the case of selecting Glendale in New Orleans, is they're going with experienced Super Bowl cities until Las Vegas can get its act together. So there's no guarantee that the Raiders will get 2025 either. Riley says they should have followed the Rams. They picked land with plenty of room for parking. Yep. Well, that's what they had downtown. That's what the mayor of Las Vegas was screaming about. And of course, in Oakland, we would not have had that problem at all, as you know, or should know. Riley says, or I should say the Rams plan to follow Vegas. Got it. Got it. Hey, folks, it's 9:07. I'll be back later. I've got to take care of some things. I'll be back a little bit later, about 10. But I wanted to get this word out there later, about 10:30. All right, thanks a lot. See ya.